Hello and welcome to a new technical webinar on the Opemiska project. If you are listening to this podcast, it's probably because you have some interest in the project or you may be an investor in QC Copper and Gold. Welcome. My name is Charles Baudry and I am a director and the vice president exploration for QC Copper and Gold and a qualified person as per NI 43-101. This update features the results of an audit we just completed on the Springer-Perry block model, and we'll present our proposed exploration program for 2022 and what this could mean for an updated mineral resource and for the development of the project. Finally, we will look at some likely timelines for the project. We will be issuing some forward-looking statements in this webinar, and we must warn you that the future is not known and there is no certainty our predictions will come true. However, we enter this year with a good, solid mineral resource, which includes 80% of the resources in the measured and indicated categories, and excellent possibilities to expand the resource by drilling inside the existing conceptual pit. QC Copper is listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol QCCU, and we currently have approximately 134 million shares in circulation, with about $18 million in cash in the treasury and about $10 million in securities. We have already fulfilled the expenditure requirements of the Opemiska option, and we are seeking to accelerate the other obligations of the option agreements we have in order to outright own our properties. The company is an important player in the Chibougamau camp. We control 4 historical mines, and we have a large land position in the region that spans over 15,500 hectares and includes a 50% interest in the NI 43-101 compliant 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐤 deposit, which is about 600,000 ounces of gold and is located just north of the town of Chibougamau. In early November, QC Copper published a technical report on the Opemiska property that presented an in-pit mineral resource estimate totaling over 103 million tons that comprised 81.7 million tons of measured and indicated resources at a grade of 0.88% copper equivalent and an additional 21 million tons of inferred resources at a grade of approximately 0.73% copper equivalent. Within this larger pit is an 80 million ton pit that is constrained by the town and also includes a starter pit of approximately 11 million tons at a grade of nearly 1.3% copper equivalent. The larger pit was chosen for reporting because it's the resource that provides the largest net present value for the project. We are looking to build a major mine at the doorstep of the community of Chapet. Getting the community buy-in has always been a priority for QC Copper, and we are making every effort to mitigate or minimize any disruptions on the town. This is a mining town that has been supportive of our efforts. Fortunately for us, we can point to the Canadian Malartic and Detour mines as excellent examples of the economic and development opportunities that the rebirth of an old mine can mean for the communities around it. A very important aspect of this mineral resource is the way it was estimated. The starting point was the distribution of stopes that we digitized from level plans and sections that were available in paper format. This data was from the old mine exploited before the age of computers where everything was recorded on paper. We also recovered the paper logs of over 16,000 drill holes completed by the mine. These holes included all the historical drilling in and around the 4 old mines, namely the Springer, the Perry, the Cook, and Robitaille, and all the exploration holes done within a radius of about 10 kilometers from the old mines. Once the stopes were digitized and wireframed, and the drill holes entered into a 3D software with all the assays, we digitized around the stopes broad envelopes of mineralized rock, capturing most of the material above a nominal cutoff grade of about 0.2. These envelopes, which we called veins, are not true veins, the veins being represented by the mined out stopes, but represent stockworks of mineralized rock invariably centered on the stopes, in addition to the crown pillars and the internal pillars between the stopes. Where no stopes exist, however, no veins were defined, and this material we call halos. Our independent qualified persons defined a total of 81 million tons of measured and indicated resource at a grade of 0.88 and a further 2.5 million tons of inferred resource at a grade of 0.61 in the veins. For the halos, our independent QP defined 19 million tons of inferred resource at a grade of 0.75. So we have about 80% of the tons in the veins, most of which is measured and indicated, and about 20% of the tons in the halos, all of which is inferred. Shown here is a typical section of the Springer mine. It shows the historical stopes, the vein envelopes, as well as the surrounding halo domains and the areas of potential resource expansion in red. You can see from this section that the resource estimate in the halos was very conservative. We can see it in how the mineralized blocks cluster in the sections with large areas having no blocks at all. In the halos, the independent QPs used a 20-meter search radius on the resource blocks, and this caused the resource to collapse around the drill holes. Note also that a large part of our drilling in 2019 and 2021 was done within the halo envelopes, and it's our opinion that the continuity of grade is better than it appears from the resource estimate. This, in our view, presents a very good opportunity for resource expansion in the pit. Another important point is that the average grade defined for the halos is 0.75 copper equivalent. This is much higher than we expected and suggests that with better continuity of grade in the halos that we may establish with more drilling and careful logging, we may add a very significant amount to the halo tons and potentially at very good grade, which may allow us to expand the in-pit resource towards the depth. The audience should keep in mind that the depth limit of the pit is not defined only by mineralization, but also by the strip ratio. If we can move a ton of waste into the mineralized category, the impact is considerable as it reduces the pit by a ton of waste while adding a ton of mineable material. When you do that, you also add the potential to deepen the pit because there is less waste, particularly if the average grade of the converted mineralized blocks is high. A ton of waste recovered in the pit is thus worth at least 2 tons, possibly more, because when we add a ton of resource in the pit, it is not only 1 ton less of waste, but which is better than defining a ton outside the conceptual pit. But our plan this year is to reinterpret the geology of the deposit as we continue to drill and to remove the halos and veins and replace these with mineralized envelopes that will encompass all of the mineralization above the nominal cutoff grade. What does this mean for the project? Firstly, that we have a really good reason to believe that we will add significantly to our resource just by drilling inside the current conceptual pit outlined, and 2, that we will probably add some small satellite pits to the project. I would like to reiterate something that was presented previously but may not have been sufficiently underlined. Within the larger pit is a high-grade starter pit of 10.5 million tons at a grade of 1.26% copper equivalent, with a very low strip ratio. This starter pit includes the crown pillars of the Springer mine, and this will allow accelerated payback of capital in the first years of production. This is considered to be highly significant for the economics of the project. So what else needs to be done on the project? Well, in addition to drilling and resource, the preliminary economic analysis is going to require some additional information. For the initial PEA, it will be important to have some data on metallurgical recoveries. Although we have the average recoveries for the whole period of operation of the old mill, the grades were considerably higher on the one hand, and the science of metallurgical processing has improved a lot since then. So that preliminary testing is necessary to inform the resource estimate, particularly the cutoff grade, and the preliminary economic analysis. As well, some data regarding the rock mechanics is needed to help better model the pit wall slopes for the optimized pit calculation. As mentioned, the rocks are quite competent, which may allow us to use much steeper pit walls, and this in turn could significantly reduce the footprint of the pit. Moreover, there will be a considerable amount of waste produced from the open pit, which will require long-term storage, and whether this material produces acidic runoff or, on the contrary, consumes acid will be extremely important to establish early on so as to inform the preliminary economic analysis. A standard ABA test exists for this, among other things, and a suite of waste samples will be submitted for testing. Informally, we know that calcite is an important gangue mineral in the deposit, and as such, we are optimistic that the ABA test will show the waste to be acid-consuming. In hindsight, it's pretty obvious that given the geometry of the mineralization in the veins at 𝐥𝐤𝐿, which, contrary to typical orogenic gold deposits, where the gold occurs in well-defined break, which naturally limits the depth extent available for open pit mining, these copper gold veins occur over a wide area and are a natural fit for an open pit. This was already evident from the work done by RPA back in 2013 and 2014, and our work basically refined and expanded on their results. It's not surprising, therefore, that we delineated such a prospective resource and, as it turns out, with a very conservative approach to halo mineralization. We firmly believe that our current drilling program, focused almost entirely on the conceptual pit area, will allow us to firmly establish the continuity of mineralization in the halos and result in significantly expanded resource once this phase of drilling is completed. Our intention, therefore, is to focus on the pit and not to try to outline any satellite pits in this phase of drilling. These areas will be the object of some limited drill testing to decide where we want to commit to delineation drilling for satellite pits, but we think we will get more return on investment by concentrating our drilling in the existing conceptual pit. In addition to this main in-pit drill focus of our exploration on the Opemiska project in 22, we continue to evolve our ideas regarding the mineralization at the regional scale. The interpretation of the primary role of the 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐵 fault on the mineralization at 𝐵 suggests there are close structural commonalities between the deposits in 𝐵 and those in the main Chibougamau camp. In Chibougamau, the mineralization is found either in northeast or northwest trending faults that have been shown to be conjugate structures. At 𝐵, the northeast trending 𝐥𝐤𝐵 fault may not have any mines, but significant copper and gold mineralization has been found in several locations along its trend, and mineralized northeast trending splays are known further northeast at the 𝐥𝐤𝐵 mine and on the 𝐥𝐻𝐵 property, where secondary structures of the 𝐥𝐤𝐵 fault host significant gold-copper mineralization. All the economic mineralization at 𝐵 is hosted in either east-west or northwest trending fault vein structures that were formed in response to drag folding in the Venture and Bourbeau sills along the 𝐥𝐤𝐵 fault. According to this model, mineralization at 𝐵 would have occurred late in the history of movement of the mainly left lateral 𝐥𝐤𝐵 fault and may have coincided with inversion and right lateral movement. In Chibougamau, most of the historically mined ore in the camp came from northwest trending fault vein structures, showing similar relationships, suggesting that the two camps may have formed in a similar way. If this interpretation is correct, then the major northeast trending structures, such as the 𝐥𝐤𝐵 fault and the parallel Scott fault, and the bridging or transfer Chibougamau copper fault, could represent potential vectors to additional 𝐵-style mineralization along splays of these structures in rocks that are favorable hosts for chemical or geomechanical reasons. The best way to test this approach is with super high resolution airborne magnetic surveys, and to this end we have commissioned a tight 50-meter space teleborne magnetic survey to map the major structures and potential northwest trending splays that could be evaluated by ground prospecting or induced polarization surveying, since these deposits are known to be non-conductive for the most part. In addition to the structurally controlled deposits in the 𝐵-Chibougamau camp, the area is known for synvolcanic massive sulfide deposits. These deposits were formed contemporaneously with the hosting volcanic rocks and occur on both flanks of the Chibougamau camp. The eastern part of the property sits on the southwest flank of the Chibougamau anticline, and the same stratigraphy is found at the Lemoineman and on the Scott Lake deposit is also found underlying the eastern part of the Opemiska project. Exhalative mineralized horizons have been uncovered and stripped at the Sawmill occurrence, and this horizon extends for over 3 kilometers to the southeast from Sawmill. We are currently covering this with a deep, penetrating infinitem survey to test for potential conductive bodies down to a depth of 600 meters. Any anomalous response will merit drill testing. Aside from the geological endowment of the project, which was clearly established with the publication of our NI 43-101 compliant mineral resource of over 100 million tons of in-pit resource at 0.85% copper equivalent, with, as we showed, good potential to expand, the project has numerous advantages deriving from its location. The most important requirement for a base metal project is, of course, infrastructure. These projects produce considerable tonnages of concentrate, which need to be shipped, ideally by rail, to a smelter for processing. Without infrastructure, the project will remain undeveloped. Fortunately, at Chibougamau, we have a huge amount of infrastructure. 2 paved highways going to southern Quebec and the western Abitibi and Ontario, respectively. We have a railway going south to the St. Lawrence River, and there's serious discussion to reestablish the historical rail line linking 𝐵 with the rest of the Abitibi and the Horn Smelter. We also have a high-power electrical line coming down from James Bay, and it crosses the eastern part of our property, And on the property itself, there's a large regional substation that provides power to the whole region of Chapais and Chibougamau. The Opemiska property is host to 4 historical underground mines, and there's an old tailings facility. So we consider the area to be brownfields for mine development, which should facilitate permitting. Moreover, the area is home to several thousand people, many of whom have worked or are currently working in the mining industry and have the skills required to operate modern open pit mine. Finally, the Chapais-Chibougamau region is located north of the 49th parallel and thus considered in the north for planning purposes and is part of the Quebec government's Plan Nord, which means a mining project in Chapais could benefit from additional government support, either directly or for infrastructure development, such as the abandoned rail link between Chapais and Quevilly. All these factors are extremely favorable to the economics of mining in the region, and we believe that the project will benefit tremendously from this. It's likely the location of the project itself will add significantly to both the net present value and the internal rate of return when compared to a similar project that is more remote. Even with an ordinary project, the infrastructure would make a big difference, but with a large project like the one at Opemiska, the impact of infrastructure is even greater. QC Copper and Gold has an important land position in the Chapais-Chibougamau mining district. In addition, the company has the mining rights over 4 historical mines in the Chapais camp and has defined a very attractive open pittable mineral resource on the property. As shown in this webinar, there is considerable room to expand the mineral resource within the existing conceptual pit at Springer Prairie and good potential to define some smaller satellite pits in the area. Since it started work in the Opemiska property in early 2019, the company has reinterpreted the deposit model for the mineralization in Chapais and placed the 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐵 fault as the key structural feature in the district. And we showed that the deposits, which formed in response to drag folding in the Venture and Bourbeau sills along the 𝐥𝐤𝐵 fault, were formed late in the history of the fault. The 𝐥𝐤𝐵 fault is but one of a family of northeast trending structures found in the district. And there's another parallel structure, the 𝐏𝐤𝐵 fault, that has been interpreted and shown to coincide with a younger cross-cutting Proterozoic dike. The Chibougamau copper fault is considered a transfer fault or bridging fault, if you want, between the 2 main northeast faults. And all these structures were active at the time the deposits were formed in Chapais and Chibougamau. Any northwest or east-west trending splays of these structures are potential hosts to Chapais-style mineralization. This provides considerable ground for exploration, and an airborne survey is being done to highlight such targets for ground follow-up. Finally, the base of the volcanic succession in the eastern part of the project contains the same host rocks as found in the Lemoine mine and Scott Lake deposits. And known exhalative horizons occur along a 3-kilometer trend that is currently being tested with super deep penetrating ground EM surveys. We hope we were able to convince you that the Opemiska deposit is highly significant and is worth considerably more than suggested by the QC Copper's current share price. We are fully financed up to and including a preliminary economic analysis, and we are proceeding with a drill program that we expect will significantly expand the current in-pit mineral resource estimate on the property. Our current modeling suggests that this project could support a large mill, which would be at least an order of magnitude greater than the historical mill that was operated by Falconbridge. I personally think it is truly great opportunity to buy into this stock while it has such a low value. Later on, once the consensus has been reached regarding the truly amazing economics of this project, I will return with a podcast saying I told you so. This is a case of buy and hold. We have the funding to complete the current phase of resource drilling and produce a PEA, so we don't expect any dilution this year. By that time, the valuation of the company will hopefully be more in line with the net present value of the project, but even if only in line with the company's peer group, our stock should at least be twice the current price. Time will certainly tell, but this is not a grassroots project, and the risk profile is extremely favorable, even if it was a modest project, which it is not. Okay, thank you very much, and we appreciate your attention.